Oh, look who
Hello.
finally decided to show up.
It was muted. In typical fucking gamer fashion, showed up here with my mic muted. Told one of my friends, well, I mean, shit, you probably saw the myriad of snaps, but I said I look like some stepdad. Look like my name should be Stepdad Steve.
Oh, we pointed out Taylor's bald spot to him, and he didn't know he had it.
He has a bald spot.
Yeah, and he's been growing his hair out, and I'm just like, sorry, man, I didn't mean to burst that bubble for you.
Oh,
That's gonna have to be probably one of the worst realizations in any man's life.
Mm-hmm.
listen, came in real whenever I started looking at this, like how bad my receding hairline is. So
Yeah, I don't think I could do a buzz cut because I'm just scared of how the hairline's gonna be.
this week's sponsor causes, carcinogens. Like
I can't
it's
see that.
not,
That looks like a
yeah.
Pepsi logo.
It's Pepsi.
It's a zero sugar.
Zero sugar. Supposedly, like, even worse than we thought it was. But hey, man,
Isn't everything nowadays?
that's what I was gonna say. I'm already midway through my life, anyways. So, no,
No, you're not.
hell yeah,
Come on, we're only living till we're 60.
You're gonna die at 60?
yes.
Okay.
I'm going to Mars and then dying. That's my goal. Not really.
All right.
Well.
How the turntables.
Yeah. Going to see, big blow up, boomy boom movie.
Oh,
Wanna
the
see that
Barbie
tonight?
movie.
Oh, well, no. Not tonight. Not Barbie tonight, but
Barbenheimer.
Well, a part of that, yeah. I'm gonna go see. I'm gonna go see. Cillian Murphy, be all silly.
Is it not Killian Murphy?
It is. Okay.
I don't know how to pronounce his name.
No, it is. It's you're pronouncing.
I'll
it
be
right.
honest.
I'm
I thought
being
it
dumb.
was. I thought it was Cillian Murphy. Honestly.
I think it is Killian. I don't know.
Yeah, but,
Well,
Someone tell me how to pronounce this man's name.
I'm sure. it's
Peaky
not that
Blinders
important.
went and got an
Somebody will say it.
education, and the same guy from Peaky Blinders went and created the, atomic bomb. So, lore crossover. It's crazy. Did you know that? That's the real life origin story of Oppenheimer.
Then ends up in Gotham somehow.
Yeah. Accurate. No, but I'm gonna go see that tonight, so that'll be
Cool.
pretty fun. It's either gonna be great or it's gonna be not great.
I mean, it's Christopher Nolan. I'm sure it'll be fine.
Really great. Oh, and the guy who did the music for The Mandalorian, he is the person that did the score for Oppenheimer.
Oh, nice.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, fun little factoid. But anyways,
Much cool. Very cool.
let's get this kick on the show, huh?
Yeah, insert jingle here.
Yeah. That's what it sounds like.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
If I closed my eyes, I would have thought that I was just listening to the podcast.
I mean, honestly.
But
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Kyle's favorite thing, ASMR. Well, I messed that up. Anyways, hey guys, what do we got going on in here today? Whatever, this Sunday, a song by a musical artist that I know. Anyways, today's Sunday. What do we got going on?
we're talking some Dungeons and Dragons today with our very first guest, Cole.
Oh.
Yo.
Yeah. What about an
Been
introduction
playing-
for that? Hmm?
Yeah, Cole and I have been friends for the last, 5 or so years now?
Yeah, probably close to that. It doesn't seem like
yeah.
it's been that long, but what's time anymore?
Time is a
Honestly,
weird
just a
soup.
construct.
I think it's actually been closer to like 4 years because we met like right as the pandemic was starting, which was like
Yeah,
2019.
yeah, 4 years. That sounds about right.
Can't
Yeah, we
believe
worked
that
at the same
happened.
place
That was
for a
crazy.
while and started doing like game nights and stuff every week, and then that kind of switched into playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Cool.
So now we're in like what, two campaigns together?
Yeah, and then I'm in another one with another friend of mine that we usually do on like Wednesdays or Thursdays.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Very cool. Very cool. So Cole, tell me about the relationship you have with your parents. Just getting the
I have an
hard-hitting
amazing
questions.
relationship with my parents.
I'm just
Uh,
kidding. I'm kidding.
Standard middle class family. Both parents married, lovely people.
We like bring you on here to talk about D&D and then just start grilling you about your personal life. Tell us about what happened on November 11th of 2011. Why did you yell at that kid crossing the street?
Because he was walking with the last copy of Skyrim and it was release day. I needed
Oh,
it.
shit. Actually, dude, that's crazy. Do you remember? That's like, is that a thing now? Like, do people still go and like line up, in front of like GameStop for game releases? I mean, I did.
So,
Like
Sometimes.
back in the day.
yeah, I actually went to go buy a PS5 a couple of weeks ago at this point, or a month ago, around the release of Tears of the Kingdom, and I rolled in to pick it up, and there was a bunch of people sitting there waiting for the release of it.
Interesting. Yeah.
Nothing was more awkward than buying a really expensive gaming system in front of probably 45 people.
All these like children. You're like, yeah, I can do this.
Yeah, I just like walk up, just slide my card across it, and just casually make like a $600 purchase.
The kid's like, Mom.
But the nice thing is they go by East Coast time, so you can get it like 2 or 3 hours earlier than we normally are supposed to for their midnight releases
Yeah,
and
it's
stuff.
like 10 o'clock usually.
Sorry, Mom, if you're listening, I'm sorry. One time, I snuck out. I don't know why I put that in air quotes. I actually did sneak out, but I snuck out to go to the what was it? The Modern Warfare 2 launch, I think it was back in the day, so I could get my copy. And I think back in the day, didn't we get like fun little extra shit for doing it on launch day? I feel like, or maybe it was just because I was purchasing the deluxe version, which was
Yeah, I remember
really
I got like
expensive at the
bonus
time.
XP for
Yeah.
Modern Warfare 2 when I got it.
It's just crazy. It's crazy to think how much time has changed. I don't really think people are like doing shit like that anymore, or like movie releases. I don't think people are like dressing up to go see movie releases.
No, I think a lot of the formality
Maybe.
and a lot of things have been kind of taken away.
Yeah, COVID or people just growing up.
Yeah, I mean, I prefer not having to, dress up just to go to the movies.
Oh, come on. There was nothing more fun than, going full cosplay, pretty much, just to go see a movie release.
Yeah, I mean, I've actually, I don't think I've ever dressed up for anything but like Halloween's growing up.
I am nerdy enough to admit that I did it for both Star Wars and Harry Potter. So
Get the last Harry Potter, yeah.
it's just, nerd shit. But yeah, well, so as they said, we're actually here today on this podcast virtually to talk about D&D. And yeah, I don't really know. How do you guys want to go about that? I'm not a big D&D person.
Well,
I'd love
I guess
to
starting
learn
out,
more.
D&D is formerly known as Dungeons and Dragons.
Mhm.
It's considered a tabletop role-playing game where a group of friends can get together. They'll have like one storyteller and then a bunch of people playing like the main characters of that story. And then you just kind of role play various characters while rolling dice to determine the outcome of various events.
I love that. That was like a textbook answer, and that covered all the bases. I think we can end there. Have a great week, everybody.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a really cool sort of hobby to get into because
Mhm.
Dungeons and Dragons is like the most well-known one. But in my time doing like tabletop RPGs, I've played in like fantasy games, sci-fi games. I've played like a Game of Thrones tabletop.
Mhm.
Uh, One really fun one that didn't last very long was we played a Star Wars D6 system, which is like you only use the standard dice,
Interesting.
and that one was really fun.
Yeah.
Got to play a stormtrooper.
Live your fantasy.
Yeah, he was ironically a lot more of like a Finn-esque character. He like ran away and everything.
See,
Tried to fight
it's a
against
good
the
storyline.
Empire, joined the rebellion.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good storyline. Wish that Disney, would have fucking, played that one out a
They
little bit
could
better.
definitely bank on that market. I don't know why they haven't.
I know. Yeah. I mean, it's a really good storyline. So I'm sure that was fun to play, in D&D.
Yeah, if only it lasted more than like 5 sessions.
Mm.
But
I
yeah, that's
that's the kind of the hardest part is like finding people and then working around all those schedules. Especially
There's
like we
just
have
two of us.
what 7 people in our campaign or something like that.
yeah 8 including me. There's 7
Mhm.
players and then me, the DM.
That's
And
crazy.
trying to get that many people's schedules together is insane. I mean, I don't think we played in almost a month at this point because between like funerals, camping, weddings, people are just busy during the summer. Who would have thought?
Yeah. The audacity. I mean, come
I
on.
know. It's like, come on, just move the plans.
I mean, shit,
I know,
that does make sense. I mean, Kyle and I even struggle, it seems like, with just the both of us trying to schedule our time to do stuff.
Mhm.
There's just 2 of us, so I can't even imagine having that many people to have to schedule, especially virtually, where you maybe have people in different parts of the country. If you guys do the virtuals, and then, of course, in person, everyone's got jobs and lives and everything else to try and handle. So.
Yeah, the virtual game I'm in, we haven't played in probably 2 months now.
Oh, wow.
Just
Yeah.
mostly my fault, but just I've been out of town for jobs on the days that we're supposed to play. So
Yeah.
just
Gotta make that
how the
money.
cookie crumbles. Yeah, for sure. So like Cole, I know like obviously we've been playing for years now. As someone who's kind of like looking to start or is hesitant to start
Mhm.
playing, like what kind of tips or advice would you have for someone just kind of like starting out?
Yeah.
Well, I'd say probably the biggest advice is don't be afraid to do something that you think might be a little embarrassing.
Mm.
It's always a little hard to get into the idea of just like playing a character or acting out a role, because especially in front of people you might not know very well, because the first thing you think is like, oh, they're going to be judging me. But I guarantee you, every other person at the table is probably thinking the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Right.
And everybody's so focused on themselves and trying to make sure they don't do anything, stupid or embarrassing, that they're probably not going to notice the thing you do. The other hardest part is finding a group of people, a group of friends you can play the game with.
Yeah.
I would suggest, find a local hobby shop that, deals with like board games or card games, and you can generally find people who probably want to play some D&D. I tried that a little bit when I first moved down here. Met a bunch of really nice people, but I got super lucky. I ended up moving into like a house with like 8 people, and half of them played D&D together. So
Oh, cool.
I was able to like slide into that group, but not everybody can be that lucky. So hobby shops are kind of one of the better places to go. You can generally also find like, Discords or online forums where people are trying to get groups together.
Mhm. I think
Um,
hitting on your like role playing aspect and not being afraid with that, I think with the critical role boom, everyone kind of is like that's what they look to as far as I need to
Yeah.
be doing these crazy voices and these over the top sounds and like just these really emotional scenes, and it's like you do not have to play like those paid professional actors to
yeah.
Yeah.
have fun with your friends and make a cool story that everyone just has a good time with. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much of a hot take this is. I think Critical Role is like the best and worst thing to happen to D&D because it has brought in so many people and brought so much popularity to the hobby. But on the
mhm,
same stance, it sets such a high expectation for
Yeah.
players to act super well, for DMs to craft these super intense stories with all these different plot twists and world building, and they're getting paid who knows how much money to do that, way more than I'll ever see. And I'm doing it for free, so you can never
mhm.
expect someone like me to be able to put out the same story as Matt Mercer. But
And they
we,
probably,
we
they probably even have like a team of writers that do all that shit for them too. It's probably not even necessarily directly
Mm,
just them.
I don't
Like
know if they have writers, but they
yeah, I
definitely have a
know
lot
like
of cameramen and
time
all
to
the
put into
crews
it.
and stuff. But
Yeah.
Yeah, I know Matt Mercer, like that's just like his number one hobby is he just loves his world building. So he's like writing books all the time and
Mm.
crafting up stories for his world. So it's less that he needs to think of things on the spot as far as like story beats, but he's actually just pulling off of what he knows from his own world that he created.
Mm.
One of the hardest things about like maybe running in a world that you didn't create is then having to memorize 300 to 400 pages worth of lore
Yeah.
to run it properly. And but best thing I can say about that is don't worry too much about it. Chances are, if you, the DM, haven't gone through the effort of reading it, your players might not have as well. And if you need to change something for your story, change it.
Mm.
The most important thing is that you as the DM are having a good time, and the players themselves are having a good time. So as long as the story pertains around doing things the players want to do, and you're working together to try and make something cool happen, it's always going to be a good time.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and I think more than
I
anything else, that's what D&D is supposed to be, is just having a
mhm.
good time. And you don't want to
yeah,
have like
for
a forced interaction or forced like you don't want your over the topness to throw off everyone else as well, which
Right.
I think a lot of people do when
yeah,
they first get into it because they think they have to.
yeah, spotlighting can be a huge issue, and the larger your group gets, the more detrimental it can be to the group as a whole.
Yeah.
But that's why it's good to always have an open, clear communication between all the players and the DM. If anybody's having any sort of issues, it's best to bring it up like, hey, I'm not having fun with this aspect.
Mhm.
This thing didn't really land with me very well. And the DM can do that for the players as well. If the DM sees one player taking up a bunch of the time and another player is doing almost nothing, the DM can either try and engage that player who's not doing a lot, or ask the player that is spotlighting to try and segue the spotlight to someone else for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Give everybody kind of an equal time to play.
Yeah.
And then
And yeah,
I
for sure.
I think people just need to also not take it super seriously because it is just a game. I think a lot of people get way too into everything and end up getting too invested, and then when bad things happen and they don't go their way, they get super upset or super pissed off, and then they just stop having a good time. And one person not having a good time, it can bleed to the whole rest of the vibe.
Yeah. Yep.
But it's generally a good time. I haven't had a bad time playing D&D in probably 4 or 5 years. There was a point in my life where I wasn't doing a whole lot, and I was getting super invested. I got to experience that sort of other side of the table where it's the only thing you got going on. It's the only
Yeah.
thing you really are caring about at the moment, and boy, does that make the game not near as fun.
Just because it's like almost like work at that point, or
Yeah, it's almost like when you play video games for a job and you can't play them in your free time.
yeah,
You just ruin it for yourself.
yeah.
So I guess there's a kind of a very, very common question for new DMs that are kind of starting out. What books
Mm.
do they need? Because you
Uh,
don't need to go out and buy every single one, right?
I mean, thanks to the beauty and glory of the internet, you really don't need to buy any books to be a DM. You can like there's fantasy map generators that can even craft political boundaries, lore, and stuff for a world for you,
Hmm.
and then you can just read that and use that as a campaign setting if you need to.
That's cool.
If you ever have a question about a rule, you can generally just Google 5e or whatever system you're playing and
Hmm.
the question you have and find an answer in like 30 seconds, as well as a million forums about people discussing what they do and don't like about that rule.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure
so
a lot
that's,
of people
that can
have
also be fun.
very, yeah, I was going to say, I'm sure people have a lot of very strong opinions about some of the different campaigns. And
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, people like to do what's called home brewing, where you either make your own rules or you alter the rules that already exist to fit better into your group. And so a lot of forums you'll find people saying like, "Oh yeah, this rule was in specific about this one item, so this is how I generally handle it in my games." And as a DM, that can even be a nice tool, just to kind of figure out how to get around some of the rules that are more vague. But one of the good things about the current edition of Dungeons and Dragons is it's purposefully vague, so the DM can kind of just brush over stuff and keep the fun going. Because there's some systems out there, like the Pathfinder system is amazing. It's super complicated. If you love the numbers and you love the character building, it's almost endless customization there. But in that also comes 900 to 1200 pages worth of rules just on how the math works.
Yeah.
And nothing's worse than when you're trying to get something going on, you're trying to keep everybody hyped up and tensed for the combat you're in, and then somebody's like, I don't think it works like that, let me look it up, and you guys spend 30 minutes pouring through rules and
scrolling through like literally thousands of pages.
Yeah, I even had to have a rule at one point where it's like, if you don't have the book open, finger on the rule that's in question, you got to just defer to the DM. Like, and if you don't like it, talk to the DM after.
Yeah.
Because other people will not have fun if you're just pulling open a book every 10 minutes and spending 30 minutes looking for a rule just so you can do 2 damage more. It's ridiculous.
Then pulls out book.
The rules lawyers are...
Yeah.
So, those players are... they're cute.
Yeah, I like to tell any DM that I'm playing under, like, I used to be a rules lawyer. I like to know the rules. I try to only use it if I feel a player's life is in danger. If I can save a player's life so their character can stay around, I'll pull out some rules. I'll try to argue with the DM a little bit. Otherwise, I just feel like it's not very important. It just brings the vibe down.
Right. Well, I know we had a player death recently in our campaign where the guy's like, well, I'm playing a celestial, and then he dies, and then the only way to resurrect someone is on their plane of existence, and we couldn't get there. So
yeah, it's kind of hard to get to heaven when you're 3rd level. So
yeah, and that was their first game with us, and I was like, but how can we figure this out? And just you got a new character, buddy. Man. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Luckily he took it in stride, and everything was fine. It sucks. The crappiest part about that is that was my first character death ever, and since I've had like 4 sessions. I've had like 4 character deaths since then. Yeah, people have been dropping left and right.
Yeah, I decided to like change my character completely, just have him leave. He didn't die as far as I know.
Yeah, I mean, I got no reason to kill him.
Yeah, I just changed characters because we had, in my opinion, too many magic users. So it completely changed.
Sorry, hold on just a second.
I can hear that doggo.
Yeah, she's streaming. Hold on. I don't want to like wake her up. She'll stop.
Get him. Just go get him. Go get him in your dreams. You can do it.
I think she's done. We went to the dog park this morning, so she's very tuckered out.
Oh, nice.
Dude, this was like a cool ass dog park. It has like a full bar on the inside to where like the people that take
dogs can't drink,
but it's actually got dog based beverages too, like that you can give your dog that are safe. It has like dog food that you can give your dog. It's really cool. It's really fucking cool. Anyways,
nice.
Back to the topic at hand.
That's fancy as hell.
It was an upscale dog park. It was very interesting. Anyways, yes, D&D, not my very cute dog. Okay, so yeah. I mean, I think it would be kind of cool though. Sidebar, rules lawyer. What if that was like an actual D&D character that just their sole purpose was to go in and say, actually, Your Honor, my client doesn't deserve to die because...
That would be pretty funny, like maybe a cleric that worships a god, and he just like treats the god like a judge, and he's the lawyer trying to defend his clients, the other party members. It'd be pretty funny. I think one of the best things about D&D is just the absolute freedom you can have
Yeah.
in doing stuff. Like, you can always figure out some sort of a way, and if you talk to your DM, you can make whatever you want happen. You know, Kyle was playing a character, he saw a cool weapon, he's like, dude, can I have this weapon? It looks like a lightsaber. I was like, you know, that sounds
Yeah.
pretty dope. Let's do that. I was like, let's give you a lightsaber.
There you go. That's a deep cut from episode 1.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah.
We're bringing it back. It all comes back around.
It all comes back around. Time is circular. The Earth is
So,
flat. You know.
When I first started, like,
Really?
I didn't
you were just
know
gonna let me get away
anyone-
with that one? You were just gonna let
Yeah.
me get away with a?
I'm gonna keep going.
Oh my god.
So,
Okay.
when I first
never
started
been to
playing,
space.
I didn't really know anyone in my group. I barely talked at all. How would you kind of like engage a player like that? Like, I was lucky to have a group that just kind of tolerated me until I decided to say something. Like, how would you engage like a newer player that socially anxious, doesn't know what to do, is learning on the fly? Like, what would you do in that situation?
So the taking a step back and letting them, you know, act when they're comfortable with acting is definitely one of the options. I prefer the into the frying pan method. I ask them to make a backstory, and then as early as I can, I introduce someone from their backstory, so they almost feel obligated to interact with at least that story bit and with me. I also try to find other players who might be willing to talk to that player outside of the game and incorporate their backstories together so their characters can know each other. That way, not only am I as the DM trying to get them incorporated into the story and get them, role playing and acting out and getting out of their shell a little bit, but another player is actively trying to get them to do that as well. It also allows for a little bit more camaraderie, at least between the new player and someone else in the party. Makes them feel less isolated.
Yeah.
I know not everybody would want the DM just singling them out in the beginning of the campaign and making them a very important part of it, but I feel, especially when you have a smaller group, it's important for every player to have an equally important role in the story as a whole. So I generally like to have my players give me as detailed a backstory as they're willing to give me, with like names of various people, organizations they might have been a part of, and then try and very quickly at least get some sort of introductory like story beat involving their backstory. One, just as a way of letting them know, like, I as a DM haven't forgotten that they have a backstory, because nothing feels worse than when you craft up like a thesis paper on your character's backstory and your DM just never touches it.
Been there and was not. I was just like, why did I
It's like, why
go
through
through all this? Yeah, I was like, but now I just do like little like bullet point sort of things like you were talking about, where it's like people they might have known. Why are they here?
Yeah.
Why are they venturing? Stuff like that. Just little things.
Yeah, I got really into literature for a little while. Not necessarily like reading books, but reading like how books are written and how writers go about like their creative process. And one of the things I really like is when you're creating a character, it's always important to think of things like where did they come from and where are they going. So in the where did they come from, you try to figure out things like, who are their parents, where were they born, what were like some of their major hobbies growing up, what are their likes and dislikes. And then where they're going is more like, short-term and long-term goals. So like their long-term goal is like, let's say they want to become the best swordsman in the world. Their short-term goal might be to look for someone who can train them. And not only you can get a backstory about why they want to be the best swordsman that you can incorporate into their journey, then you also kind of know what direction as a DM to guide the player if they want it, or what kind of obstacles and rewards you can put in their path to make them feel like they're achieving their goal.
Yeah.
And it makes for a really fun experience. But if you make a big old backstory and the DM doesn't do anything about it, you just kind of feel bad. You feel ignored or forgotten. And that can even create spotlighting characters. People who like, well, if the DM's not going to get into my backstory, I'm just going to step to the forefront of the story and make it my own. And, it can always cause some sort of issues. Human communication seems to always come with the risk of conflict. It's always good to try and keep things as clear and communicative between everyone.
Especially in a
That's
group
honestly
that big, there's going to be personalities that are going to clash, kind of naturally. So
Yeah, especially when you bring like one new person into an
Yeah.
already established group, you got to be careful on how everyone's acting with each other.
Mm-hmm. No, we did what 3 or 4 new people at once.
Yeah, it was a pretty big jump. It was a small group because that's all we had available.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of our players moved into the apartment beneath me, and one of his roommates wanted to play with us. My sister
Oh,
moved down to my town and wanted to play with
he
us.
knows Damon.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
yeah, and it was Damon's roommate. And then and then like another friend of mine moved back to town, so I wanted him to join. And then I just had another friend who I love playing the game with that is just always super busy, who just for some reason isn't anymore. So it was like, yeah, let's make our tiny group of 3 adventurers be a big old band of 7.
Mm-hmm. And now I don't think any player from the original campaign is that character anymore.
Yep, it's all new characters at this
Mm-hmm.
point.
That's kind of cool.
Which is always interesting for me as a DM because when you create a campaign, you try to create some like long-term story events around the characters that are there. And so always trying to figure out you can either pivot off that story or pivot the new character stories into the one you're already developing is always a fun challenge. But I like to advocate, if you're bored with your character, kill them off or send them away and make a new one. I don't want you to feel obligated to stick with the character you're not having any fun with.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done that multiple times, including in our campaign. Like my first character was just an elf ranger, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool, that's awesome," and I just wasn't having any fun with it. Didn't know how to like really role play it, and my DM was like, "Well, make something else if you want. Like, if you're not having fun, like, communicate that. You don't have to be stuck in a rut just because that's the character you were doing." And then, in another campaign, none of the players talked beforehand, and we ended up having just a bunch of um, melee fighters and no healer. And, in combat, we were just getting ran through over and over. And I was like, okay, look, I talked to the DM and I'm like, can we kill off my character and I can just do a cleric? And he's like, we're not going to kill off your character. You're going to be a cleric regardless. And like, there's this big story thing where like basically he gets like these magical kind of like diamonds or crystals put in his back and like is transformed from a barbarian into a cleric and now has like the spirit of this half elf cleric just kind of guiding him on his journey now.
That's
Just like
awesome.
little things like that. Like, yeah, it's D&D is insane with what you're able to do.
Yeah.
Um,
But I mean, it's
and it
fun.
still makes perfect
It's fun.
story sense.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I would suggest to anybody who wants to get into it, definitely try and find a group or go to a hobby shop. A lot of times, like we have one in the town we live in that actually has a sign up sheet where it shows like what games are being played throughout the week, how many open slots they have, and you can just write your name on it and just walk in that day with a made character and just join a group. Really nice. And a lot of hobby shops like to do that sort of stuff just to try to keep the community alive, keep people in their shop. Especially with COVID now, because brick and mortar stores are falling to pieces.
Yeah. Yeah. Well.
Yeah, it's a wonderful time. I would I can talk about as much or as little, as in depth or as bare line as you want me to about D&D. It's been one of my main hobbies probably for the last 12 years of my life.
all right. So you can pick any campaign you want or any setting you want. What's like one or two of your favorite things that have happened, like as a DM or as a player?
Ooh, well, I have a recurring character that I play in various campaigns, various settings. His name is Quillen. I got the name from my dad's first D&D character back in the '80s. He was my dad played a little rat-faced thief, but my Quillens are always warriors. And I was playing in the Game of Thrones role-playing game, and we got this really cool thing where half the party ended up having to go south to fight in the Baratheon War. And Quillen stayed up north at the town they lived in to kind of run things because he was the son of the Lord. And in the time that he was in there, he ended up making allies of the Lannisters. found out that they were trying to overtake his family. So he then made enemies of the Lannisters. That brought on the ire of the Mountain. I don't know if how familiar you are with Game of Thrones, but the Mountain is like
Yeah, I
this
know the mountain
like
is.
7 foot tall, 350 pound, full of muscle, just super powerful warrior. Uh, was like looking for for Quillen to kill him for what he had done to the Lannisters, and Quillen ended up issuing him a challenge and fighting him in a one-on-one duel on the beach. And after the swords were clashing and wounds were had, Quillen was able to eke out a victory after probably 5 or 6 minutes worth of swords clashing. And when he finished it, he had like a broken arm. One of his legs was like gimped up. He was on his deathbed. It was only due to some friends he'd made in the town. He was able to find some amnesty from everything going on. Got a place to hide. They put a giant bounty on his head. He was accused of orchestrating his father's murder. And then when the rest of the group came back up from the war successful, he actually got tried for the murder of his father and ended up being sentenced to go to the wall. And in the last act of defiance, because Quillen was always just a very defiant character, he broke free of the people holding him down. And in probably one of the biggest moments of like role play that I've ever had, I stood up at the table and gave a 5-minute soliloquy about how I refused to live underneath the chains of a tyrant. And then he grabbed the nearest greatsword and he ended up killing himself instead of going to the wall. Nice. And and everybody, it felt really good because I felt super inspired going into it, and I didn't flubber over any words or make any sort of like mistakes in what I was saying, which was nice because sometimes I trip over my own words. And at the end of it, we all went outside and we burned the character sheet and talked about how crazy of a session it was. And
wow.
And then we all ended up going home that night. I came back the next day with a new character, and we continued on with the campaign. And probably my next favorite moment was another iteration of Quillen in a campaign my friend Daniel was running, where we ended up getting into a final battle with this he was like a dread knight or something like that. I can't remember exactly what they're called. But he was a enchanted suit of armor that was nearly indestructible, that had like the soul of an evil warlord tied to it. And our entire party ended up walking into the battle. And in this battle, we our wizard was casting spells. It was like stopping time. He was ripping up like chunks of the earth and trying to smash them together to crush this guy to pieces. One of our characters was playing a bard who just kind of talked shit to the big boss up until he was crushed by some rocks. At one point, the big bad, after getting crushed by some rocks, used some magic he had to like send himself on a pillar of rock way up into the sky to swing at the sorcerer. And I had to grab our fighter and fly halfway up the stone rocks and like the stone tower and throw the fighter up to the boss so he could get up there and start swinging on him because he had no way of flying himself. And then I ended up not being able to reach the boss, had to just take my sword and just cleave in half the giant stone tower, and just ended up being like this really big, insane like anime fight at the end of the game, because we all ended up getting to like max level, like which is like level 20 in the game. And so we had super crazy abilities. We in that campaign, we had so few players. We were doing what was called Gestalt rules, which is you just pick 2 classes, and you get basically all of the benefits from both classes.
Oh, that's cool.
Which makes every individual character have the strength of like 2 characters. We're using it to supplement having so few players. But what we didn't realize when we started doing this was that if you're willing to take time to pour into the rules, you can create some characters that at 20th level are probably the strength of like 4 or 5 20th level characters. And you can end up doing some real reality bending, world shattering stuff with that rule set. And after that campaign, we kind of closed it and realized, let's probably never do that again. My character sheet alone was probably 6 different sheets of paper, front and back, of just various abilities, stats, and math that I needed to do to run my character. When I made an attack, I had no less than 12 different bonuses that I had to add together, which totaled out to about a 60 or 70 added to my dice roll. And it's like those numbers are just way too
That's
insane to do anything with.
ridiculous.
Like one attack from my character, like one turn from him, would take probably 45 minutes. Just because there was just so much math that needed to be done, so much that could be done on a turn.
Yeah.
And it's like at first level, your turn comes up. It's like, what do you do? It's like, I'm going to hit it with my sword. You roll one dice, you roll a second dice, turns over in like 15 seconds.
Right.
So the fact that we got to a point where like we were making jokes, like we needed a PhD just to understand how to read our characters, and it was a nightmare, but it was so much fun. I'll never do it again.
But I'll never do it again. That's funny.
Oh my gosh. How many sets of dice do you have? Do you have a number?
So I personally have purchased maybe 5 sets of dice in my entire life.
Okay.
But I like to take my big bag of dice and just dump it out on the table in front of me. And I used to play at a gaming club in my hometown, and they had like a big jug of dice that was just like left behind. And so I kind of like the idea of like just leftover dice or unowned dice, just kind of accumulating it, almost like just a dragon's hoard. And so if friends ever forgot dice behind or left anything, to the side, I would just toss it in my bag, and I'd let them know, like, if you ever see my pile of dice and you see one of your dice in it, feel free to take it out of there. They never do. So
and your sister's, a new player, and she just bought her first set, and I'm like, you're going down a dangerous path. Like,
she's purchased 3 sets of dice after that
already. My gosh. You want all like the cool looking ones, you want character based ones. I know people have like, for this spell I have these color dice, and for this attack I have this color dice, and I'm like, okay, I have a lot of dice, but not that specific.
Yeah, they'll have like red and orange dice for their fire spells, and they'll have like blue mystical looking ones for magic missile. I have a character in the campaign that me and Kyle just started getting to play in that is a human who was raised by elves. And so I bought these really expensive jade dice for him. Yeah. That are just really, really cool. And it's like I'm just using those dice just for that character.
I was gonna say there's some very, very, very cool dice on Etsy, and they are very, very, very expensive. Like, woof.
Yeah, it's amazing how you can buy a set of dice for $5, or you can buy a set of dice for $90.
Yeah,
and it's like they have the same function. It's just what they're made out of that determines how much they're worth.
Yeah,
but it's nice. I like to have my little bag over there, just full of dice. Got a nice little dice tray for it. I'd say probably in total I have no less than 60 dice individually. Yeah. I actually just recently cleaned up my room, but I generally have dice laying all over my desk, all over my my end table back there. Sometimes I used to keep a D20 and just roll it for the fun of it. Be like, am I going to go get a soda or get a tea? And I'd roll the dice for evens or odds.
It's me and Legos right now. I've just got like Legos all over the place. You would think that I'm a man-child, but,
I mean, you say you're a man-child. I have, like, actual just markers sitting on my desk for drawing on battle mats.
Well, much healthier hobby, I'm sure. Less money. Legos are expensive.
But yeah, you got to buy everything and stop for a bit.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting, though, because, I feel like you've got, like, 2 things that have recently hyped people back into like D&D. Obviously Stranger Things, which I think Stranger Things being so popular has probably got a lot of people into it, or a lot of people back into it. And then of course the new movie that came out. So I have to ask, as somebody who is a big D&D person, what did you think of the most recent movie? Because they're going to do a kind of a series, right? Like this is not just the only one. Did they confirm that they're doing more?
I hope they're doing more.
Yeah, I've not heard. I think they want to do a second one, but it hasn't been
like
confirmed,
fleshed out. Yeah, but what do you think of the movie?
I thought it was fantastic. When I was sitting down and watching it, it was really fun to see them do various like things with the characters in the story and wonder
Yeah.
like, oh, what spell are they using? Oh, what skill was
Yeah.
that? One of the biggest points of conversation we were having was Chris Pine's character. I don't believe he's a bard. I think it would fit much better if he was a rogue. He plays music a little bit on his lute, but a rogue can play music as well. But he didn't cast a single spell. I never saw him use the titular bardic inspiration, which is like the main class feature of the bard.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we saw the barbarian lady rage. We saw the druid turn into an animal. You know, we got to see everybody else's like big class abilities, but we never got to see Chris Pine cast a spell. So I think if they would have had him a rogue, plus there was moments where he was like swinging at people with his reinforced lute, and he was like only ever attacking people when they're being held down by someone else they didn't know he was there, which is very similar to things like the rogue's sneak attack, which is more of them just taking advantage of the enemy being distracted to get a big hit in. But it was really fun getting to see all that sort of stuff. I loved the dragon scene. That was hilarious.
Oh, the chubby little dragon guy.
Yeah, that was amazing. And I was actually having dinner with my dad the other day, and he had brought up to me that he watched it on Paramount Plus, I think it was, recently.
Mm-hmm.
And he used to watch the old D&D cartoon back in the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
And he brought up to me that in the scene where they're in the arena near the end of the movie and like the cage comes up out of the ground, they like look to the left and see a group of people, and they look to the right and see a group of people in a cage. Apparently the people in the group of the cage to the right are the main characters from the D&D TV show back in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And so it kind of dawned on me like this has got so many references that me who's been playing the game for the last 10 years can notice various things from the series. But then even somebody who hasn't touched D&D since the mid 90s and who played it back in the 80s can still get references and see things that are happening that they know about. And so I mean I think they did wonders with that movie.
Yeah, we saw it together, and I would just like lean over and be like, "This was that spell. That was that spell."
Yeah.
Like just the whole. It was super fun.
Yeah, it's just a good time. I really hope they create more and more of them. And I mean, with the success of the movie, I don't know why they wouldn't.
Yeah, I think it did really well.
I think
like,
I think
I'm
they are
super
doing more,
into Stranger
but, yeah.
Things, but like the way they portray it in Stranger Things is a little bit different.
Yeah,
Where it's like, oh, you roll one nat 20 and you beat the guy, or like even the villains named after D&D characters like the Mind Flayer or Vecna. That's not what they look like as far as D&D lore and stuff, but as them trying to relate to the villain, naming it that makes it makes a little more sense.
Yeah,
like if you play D&D and you're going up against Vecna, it's not going to be Vecna from Stranger Things. It's not going to be the Mind Flayer from Stranger Things, because it's just a completely different thing.
Yeah, it's like the Gorgon in Stranger Things is that weird, dog-esque creature with like the row of teeth and like a circular mouth. The Gorgon in D&D is a giant mechanical bull that spews a gas that petrifies people. So it's like when you know that, it takes away a little of the allure.
Yeah,
it's like there's I think 100 monsters in the monster manual that would work better than the Gorgon, but I can't blame show writers who are probably super busy and juggling a whole bunch of stuff to then pour over the monster manual to look for the perfect monster. They probably just like, one guy in the boardroom was like, I know Gorgons. They're like, all right, it's a Gorgon.
Yeah.
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 It's like, I'm more just happy that they tried to bring it in and, give some attention to the hobby rather than be one of the people who gets just super upset they weren't 100% accurate.
And to make it, I think that what Stranger Things did good was that they kind of made it cool, right? Instead of just like putting it into that trope that like people that play D&D are just like nerds who just like sit in their mom's basement kind of thing. Like, I think it's cool because it did make it more relatable for most people instead of it just being something that is like a thing that happens in the corner kind of thing.
Yeah, it was also nice to see them playing D&D in like the first season, and it was just like a nice hobby, just what the kids were doing. I also thought it was interesting in the newer season when they started to bring in all the satanic panic stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
'Cause especially in a city
Yeah.
like Hawkins with all the stuff that's going on, I could definitely see how people can start to fall for the satanic panic.
Mm-hmm.
Which I didn't
it'd
even
be
know.
pretty.
I didn't even know that that was a thing until like recently.
Yeah, we talked about it the other day.
Yeah, I think that's some of it was more of an issue in the South. I want to say just because of a lot more of their conservative values back in the '80s. But I mean, countrywide, it was always kind of a little bit of an issue.
Yeah.
People were kind of shunned or looked down upon for it. Even like my dad was telling me he became fairly religious around the late '90s. Ended up getting rid of all of his D&D stuff because even he was kind of in the mindset it was like fairly demonic, and he just didn't like the idea of having it around. And then as he's grown more, he's realized that was kind of a weird thing to think. It's definitely not super demonic. Like, it has demons in it, it's got devils in it,
Right.
sure, but I mean, let's be honest. I've never been in a campaign where people are where the players are actively worshiping the devils or demons. You're generally creating badass paladins to go fuck them up.
Right. And it's like, I'm, religious. I go to church. Like, I've played 2 tieflings, which is like the demon character in that, and it's like they're not even necessarily evil. It's like just their bloodline is cursed by a deal with the devil or something like that, or like, but like, just because there is like stuff like that in it, it's not a satanic cult. You know?
Yeah, just because you can see the DM standing above everybody and he, says some weird demonic sounding name that he read in a book once, so he thinks to make his game cooler, doesn't mean the man's worshiping demons or devils.
Right.
He's probably just some nerd who's trying to make a cool experience for his friends so he can seem cooler to them.
Y'all devil worshippers. Shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, of all the devil worship that can happen in the world, D&D has got to be the lamest form of devil worship.
Yeah.
Well, it's a lot of that.
Nothing
It's
happens.
Like the most powerful characters in the game get their powers from their god.
Yeah.
So if you're looking to, kind of play a demonic devil worshiper character in the game, you're kind of screwed, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very powerful clerics just have the ability that, like, once a day, they can just ask their god to do something and the god will do it for them because they've done that much for their god. It's like a super powerful, like, pit fiend, just like a ruler of one of the rings of hell can walk up to a maximum level cleric. And the cleric can be like, yo, my god, you just want to fuck this guy up for me? And the god will just smite the demon dead in front of him.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
It's
prosperity
crazy.
gospel, but D&D version. So
yeah, so like if you spend any amount of time in D&D, you know that if anything, I'd be more worried about it indoctrinating people into religions worshiping false gods rather than worshiping demons and devils. Because people who believe that they're zealous for a god that exists will do some pretty radical things. I'm sure, as we all know.
Mm-hmm.
This is the truth.
But you hear anything about devil worship, it's like the worst they're doing is killing themselves or each other in some middle of the forest somewhere. And it's like, all right, let them do that. They're not hurting other people. They're generally hurting themselves.
Yep. Well, I mean, I think that kind of covers a lot. That Kyle had good questions. Good questions, Kyle.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I had another one.
Ooh.
If you
one
indulge
more.
me for a second. So
an encore.
Always.
An encore performance of questions.
Yeah, get an encore. So when I kind of talk to people who haven't played about it, I kind of describe it as like Skyrim or Fable, but there's no main character really. Like everyone's kind of working together for one singular goal. Is there any form of media that you could compare D&D to like be like, oh, I get it now, to a new person or someone who's like hearing about it for the first time, kind of like that?
I would say probably one of the most popular comparisons that everybody would know of at this point is Lord of the Rings. That is a very classic, like, can very easily be a D&D campaign. I know Dungeons and Dragons was initially inspired by the Tolkien fantasy.
Yeah, they got sued by him.
Yep. They had a lot of issues with that, but they had. I mean, that's why the the halflings are called halflings and not
Yep.
hobbits, because I think
Yep.
they were initially going to call them hobbits, but
Mm-hmm.
Tolkien came after them.
And the ranger class is literally just Aragorn.
Yeah. But yeah, and so that's like a good story of a group of people rather than a singular hero that the story revolves around. I'm trying to think of other sort of pieces of media. I know one thing new in the video game sphere that's a lot like D&D is actually the new Baldur's Gate game coming out, Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah.
I am so excited for that.
That actually uses the D&D 5th edition rules for how the game functions and works.
Interesting.
And it's made by a studio called Larian
Larian.
Studios.
Larian.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they've made a lot of other D&D-esque fantasy games like the Divinity Original Sin series, which is also really good. And fun fact, Kyle, since you don't want to get a PC to play video games on,
Can't afford it.
We have had early access for Baldur's Gate 3 on Steam for like a month now.
I know. And it
I'm
looks
already
amazing.
I'm 10 hours in and it is fantastic.
I know.
So
I've
much
heard
fun.
little bits and blurbs of, from other kind of gaming studios, this is an unrealistic RPG. Like, we can't make RPGs this big. The world is just ridiculous. This is an unrealistic expectation. And I'm like, if you have that kind of money, how's it unrealistic? Like, make your games big, make them work. Like, why?
Oh, yeah.
I don't think it's unrealistic at all.
They're mad because it is creating a better standard for video games, and they don't want to have to hold up to that standard because that's more money out of their pocket. That's more effort they have to put in. But I mean, this is probably gonna be the first AAA game released in a long time that's gonna be released without bugs. And that's shocking to have to say. I mean, even Jedi Survivor was almost unplayable for certain systems and had a lot of bugs. I'm trying to think of another game that came out recently that I had issues with.
When I played your Jedi Survivor version, you had some weird lag, and on mine, I didn't have anything, and I have no idea why that's a thing. And we're playing on PS5, both of us. So
yeah, I even set it to prefer performance over graphical quality because I'd rather it run smooth than look good. Yeah. And I mean, nowadays the difference between a game on low and a game on ultra settings is almost unnoticeable unless you're a super techie guy. Right. So it's like if I got to turn my systems down to medium to hit the frame rate of my computer, that's what I'm going to do. It's not going to bother me one bit.
Yeah, I'd rather my game work than, this looks really, really, really pretty. Like, it's still going to look really pretty.
Yeah, I mean, I started the very first game I played that I can remember was like Super Mario on the SNES and Golden Axe, also on the SNES. And compared to that, like I can't complain about the graphics on any game.
Right.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah, and those are really the only big pieces of media I can think of that are very very similar to D&D. It's just D&D is a story of just a group of people going out to do what they need to do. Honestly, a lot of JRPGs are very similar to D&D as far as storytelling goes. And you start out as a small group of people between 1 and 3 that can grow up in size up to 7 or 8 sometimes, that starts out doing mundane tasks like killing some goblins or saving a cat, and eventually end up going to kill a god or kill a major demon or save the world. And that's kind of how a lot of D&D seems to progress, although D&D takes a lot longer than JRPG to finish a lot of times.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just think it's funny, like, combat can take 1 or 2 hours to get through, and then in actual gameplay time it's like 15 to 30 seconds.
Yeah, because every round of combat is considered to be 6 seconds in the game. So we'll have 3-4 hour combat sessions, and one of my favorite things to do is at the end go, "Whoo, was that an intense 1 minute of fighting?" And everybody at the table just groans. But it's so much fun. I'm a big fan of the combat in D&D. I think you can get really wacky and wild, and especially if the DM gives you a good map to play on, you can have some good verticality buildings to run through, objectives to follow outside of just killing the monster.
I think sometimes you can talk a villain down. and not have to kill anything.
If your DM is really, I think that's the test of a good DM is to have alternate ways to deal with problems besides just swinging your sword. I've played with DMs who straight up admitted to me like I as a person just love the combat, so I set up all my encounters with the intention that you have to fight. There's no way to talk him down. There's no way around it. Like you can try and run, but I designed the combats to be fought and not to be avoided. And it's like, well, if luckily his party was full of people who were like playing fighters, clerics, paladins, like people who wanted to go in there and kick some ass. We weren't looking to dodge the fights, but what if your party was like a sneaky rogue who stole stuff and a bard who wanted to just play music and get laid? They're not going to want to fight the big bad demon. They're going to try and get out of it.
Dude, up until like you described why you play human, I have bashed on playing the human race for years until like what you told me, and I thought that was just super interesting.
Yeah, so I play. I get dunked on a lot because my favorite class race is human fighter. And people are always like in a world of fantasy and magic and monsters and these weird races. Why do you want to be just a regular dude carrying a sharp stick?
Yeah, that was my train of thought. I was like, bro, you can be anything. Why?
Yeah. And my reasoning is because I can relate to the cultural stuff that a human would have to go through, the emotional and mental ways that a human will think, being a human myself. And I have a really good time being a regular guy with no magic, watching the fantastical things unfold around him while trying to keep up. I love the idea of like I'm just a guy with a sword who hangs out with and is also relied upon by people who can bend reality. This dude, these cool horns and this like whipping tail that can create shadowy magic out of his hand and throw it at an enemy to burn them alive, and then he looks to me to lift that door or to keep some creature off of him while he finishes a ritual. And that whole aspect of being the regular guy in a fantastical world experiencing it has just always been far more fascinating and enjoyable for me than creating fantastical creatures and doing all these amazing like magical things. It kind of helps me personally feel like I am the character in the game rather than I am playing a character. So I get dunked on. I'll think of a lot of ideas on all these cool character concepts, and somehow it always comes back to I'm just gonna be playing a human with a sword. Yep. Human, male, white, fair skin. Fair skin comes from the middle class family.
And I've kind of gone through like the spectrum of races and classes at this point, just because I want to try everything. But I don't know if I'll ever play human, but like the way you describe it, I'm like, yeah, I can get why people do that.
Don't worry, I'll fill the human quota so everybody else can have fun.
I think even like the half elf we're doing in Damon's campaign, I'm still like still kind of like vanilla default, but I kind of have some things that make it a little more fun.
I wish the half races had a lot more cool options. Like I don't know why half orc has to be orc and human. Why can't half orc be orc and gnome or orc and dwarf or something?
So I have a character. I may never even get to play her, but she's the offspring of my very first character and like the character he ends up with at the very end of this level 20 campaign, and it's their daughter, right? But she was in half elf, he's a tiefling, and I just made literally half elf and a half tiefling class and found it on D&D Beyond, and it was all homebrewed and had everything I wanted. And like then she's it's a multi-class of a druid and a rogue.
Nice.
Which I don't think is very common, but I think could work out really, really well.
Yeah. Well, that, there's the thing called power gaming where people just make as powerful a characters as they can. And the reason why things like druid rogue won't happen is because they don't use the same stats. Which means you got to spread your stats out instead of focusing. But I think the idea of a druid rogue is really cool. I've always thought about like really weird combinations of stuff you can make.
Mhm.
Like the character I'm playing now is called an Eldritch Knight. They're a fighter who can cast some spells.
Mhm.
And it means that I can't hyper focus down, like just being really strong and really hard to kill. I've also got to make my character smart so I can cast
Mhm.
spells. And it's considered a really bad subclass because of it. But I don't know, the idea of a fighter swinging his sword around, but then he can also like detect magic and maybe shoot a little blue missile out of his hand. It just seems a little cool, you know.
Like, I don't know if it's something you can have fun with. You know,
Yeah, who cares if it's good?
who cares about the
Yeah.
stats? Like, if you're having fun, go for it.
It's the DM's job to balance the game, not yours.
Right.
You make the character you want to play. The DM should make it so your character has a chance of survival,
Mhm.
preferably a good chance.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and then I mean, it's up to the DM to balance the game. It's up to the party to actually convince the barbarian not to carry a keg of gunpowder into the fight with the fire
Yeah.
dragon.
Yeah. That didn't work out.
Chad, you can't blow it up.
No, but the dragon can.
Yeah. That's a thing that happened, and it did not go well.
It was fun.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how our next session's gonna go for sure.
Oh, that's the neat part. At
Yeah,
this rate,
definitely
it's never gonna happen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when it does, I'll definitely talk about it
Sorry.
on here and be like, "Well, this is what happened."
Yeah. So you got to keep coming back, or else you won't hear, listeners. So that's our hook. If you want to hear what happens with Kyle's
you've got
character,
to.
yeah.
Yeah, it's continuity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that's D&D. One could say,
Yeah,
In a nutshell, yeah.
in a nutshell. I like that.
that's the tip of the iceberg.
I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
shit, because that could be its own whole podcast, trying to go into the intricacies of
Mhm.
D&D. But yeah, there is plenty of websites out there that people can use as resources to find like local game shops and whatnot. So literally just takes Googling local game shop. Obviously for all of our listeners, maybe you live someplace where it is more convenient to use Amazon, but if you can avoid it, definitely try to use local shops for that information. And go in there, and you could find new groups. But yeah, D&D, pretty neato. Kyle,
Yeah.
you wanna talk about some news, huh? We got some news to talk about,
We can get into some news for sure.
and then this is where it's gonna go. The Nerd Network news. Oh.
Yeah, we have a thing now.
Yeah,
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
we know what we're doing.
Yes, I kind of read some of the articles you sent over.
Yeah, let
The
me open all
one
these up real quick.
that definitely caught my eye, the rumored PS5 Pro.
Okay, well,
My wallet
what you read
cries.
now?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. Like, I already have one, so I don't know that I'd get it. But it's basically saying it can have 8K resolution, but I don't know how many people even have 8K TVs or what games are
Yeah.
being made in 8K at this point. So I don't know. I mean, if you're waiting for a
yeah.
PS5, maybe get that one if it's a real thing that's happening. But I'm gonna definitely keep what I have.
Yeah, to sort of provide some context for everybody else. It was leaked on Game Rant that supposedly, allegedly, purportedly, all the legal words we gotta use here, but it is reported that the PS5 is going to be having a Pro Edition, just like they did with the PS4. So they're going to switch it up. They're going to have a slim console. They're going to have, I believe, the digital version still, and then they're going to do a Pro version. With the Pro version slotted to release in November of 2024.
2024.
Yeah, big echoes. 2024. And Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming it's probably going to be pretty damn expensive. Probably listed about $100 more than the
Probably like,
existing
what,
price. So probably
$700 or something like that.
yeah, because they're listed right now at like what, $499 for
I
the
think it's anywhere from
regular
500 to
version?
600
Yeah.
at right now.
I was seeing $4.99 generally in a bundle with another game for $569.99.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean it's a little crazy. I don't know. I mean, have the consoles sold well enough that they can justify creating on a whole nother version now?
I don't know. It's kind of hard to track because with COVID, it slowed down console sales because they weren't able to make them quick enough.
Yeah.
But I think now that they're out, they've probably sold pretty well, or they wouldn't be pulling something like this.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
You know what
the
I mean?
consoles
Who knows?
themselves, I don't really feel like any games have pushed the boundaries yet where there's like a need yet for a, for a pro version. So it's just kind of interesting.
I don't know. Maybe they're going to market it with a game that's coming out around that time that we don't even know about yet.
I mean, Spider-Man 2, I think is the only,
Well, that's coming out this year.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, so
Well, the
I
upgraded
don't know.
console,
Push the
I guess,
boundaries.
yeah, is November 2024. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, in the other news, it's not
they
like
actually
Xbox
had
is doing that. Xbox is just
I watched
releasing
it.
a terabyte version. Of it.
I watched it this morning. They had a Spider-Man 2 storyline trailer actually drop yesterday,
Oh,
Oh.
coolio.
and it looks like Harry Osborn's going to be Venom in this,
Okay, interesting.
as opposed to Hobgoblin or Green Goblin.
Yeah, or as opposed to having Eddie Brock play Venom like he always does.
Yeah. Well, they said a while ago when the first kind of trailer dropped that it wasn't going to be Eddie Brock; it was going to be their own thing. I was like, oh, okay. But so like, and I mean, in the kind of end credits of the games, there's been things where Harry is sick and Norman's trying to cure him. I think that's kind of where the symbiote thing sort of comes from. But I thought it was just a very interesting take on it. I haven't seen Harry as Venom in anything. I'm sure it is, but I'm not too into the comic stuff. But I thought it looked really cool.
I know Venom's controlled people other than Eddie Brock, but I don't know if Harry Osborn is one of them.
Mm-hmm. That should be good. Like, I mean, I played the other two and they were great. So
Yeah, I'm excited. I actually didn't know that was coming out until I watched or listened to the episode of this podcast. You guys talked about it.
yeah, October 20th.
It's exciting.
Have you listened to everything we've put out?
Yep. Yeah. Even
Nice.
the Facebook videos.
Nice, thank you.
Yeah, I like it. It's been a fun time listening. Glad to be here.
Kind of two shit shows trying to figure out what they're doing.
Well, it's gonna be weird, like if you listen to it and then like you're also talking on it. It's like you already know everything that's gonna happen.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll listen to this one. I might
For sure.
I don't know how I feel about just listening to myself talk. So,
did you want to get into the big bad Bob Iger stuff?
Sure. Yeah. So the story's gotten a little bit more intricate and complicated and worser since the last time that we talked about it.
Just a week ago.
Yeah, he has like this fantastic ability to like take a situation and look at it and say, I'm Bob Iger. How can I make this worse? And then he always manages to do that. So, not to diminish his abilities and not to diminish what he has done for Disney. Like, he has done great things. But this past week, he had said that the strikers that are currently striking, so between both now writers and actors.
Yep.
He said that the strikes are, quote, not realistic. And specifically this Business Insider article is calling out the fact that his $27 million pay package is not that realistic either. So it's just interesting. It's interesting that, last week when we talked about it, it was Disney's wanting to cut some Star Wars content, cut some Marvel content to pretty much save money. And you know, last week, whenever we first started talking about the Bob Iger drama, it was because he had said that what they're wanting is just can't happen. And this is all for somebody who makes, you know, double millions dollars of figures a year. So I think putting it into perspective, yep, we get it. You know, when you're on the top of the food chain, you're always going to make the most money. But when writers who are the reason why you have all that money are like, you know, struggling to put food on the table because it's not like they get paid that much money for what they get living in the most expensive places that they have to, you know, it's just a little tone deaf. So it's just interesting. It's, you know, I think the article even specifically called out the fact that his $27 or $27 million a year is literally 535 times the median pay of his average employee, which is just insane.
That same article was like, lock him in a room, don't let him talk ever again.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a good look at all, especially when, like, guys from your Marvel movies are bashing you.
Calling
like,
it
it's
now.
not, it's not good.
Yeah, well, the only reason it's not realistic for the strike to work is because he's unwilling to take a pay cut.
Exactly.
I mean,
and you know, him saying all of this stuff is just tone deaf because he's saying this while he's at the Sun Valley Conference in Idaho, which is like,
didn't they call it summer camp for billionaires?
Yeah, summer camp for billionaires is a good way to put it.
Yeah,
because that's literally what it is. Like, it's just crazy. But he specifically called the strike disruptive, quote, very disturbing, and that the strikers' expectations are not realistic. So it's just, God, just when you don't think it can keep getting worse, he just keeps making it worse. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens at Disney with, like, a shakeup. You know, maybe this is his time to step down and they're going to replace him. Who knows? But it'll be interesting to see what happens with content over the next, you know, year and a half or so because of these delays.
Very curious about what they're going to do because a lot of stuff's been delayed or canceled just outright at this point.
Yep.
And I don't think it's the end of that whatsoever.
Well, and, you know, I was watching some videos on YouTube about this, and I think that what's interesting is that for the longest time, I think that one of the biggest avenue streams for Disney has actually been the parks. And of course, COVID and just a generic decline in the parks in general, outside of COVID even, I think is probably really hurting their pockets. That's why they, you know, cut the Star Wars experience there at the parks. That's why they, I think they even canceled the, you know, the building they were going to build out more at Tokyo, at the Disney World in Tokyo. So I think that in general, they are just taking a step back from a lot of their very expensive business expenditures. But they also, you know, still putting it in perspective, they're still the biggest movie company in America, if you really think about it, studio-wise. So.
Well, everything they own, So when you have, like, a big media mogul conglomerate like that saying, it's just, you know, they're asking for too much, and that's where most of your movies and shows are coming from. Like, it's not great.
It's just tone deaf.
Very much so. I agree.
But what about you, Cole? You got any anything fun happening in the news this week for your world or your sphere of interest?
Well, I outside of D&D, I play a lot of video games. It's my main hobby. I recently, yesterday, was the early access release for Remnant 2.
Ooh.
I've been playing a ton of that.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of fun.
What kind of game is that? I've never even heard of that.
It is a third-person shooter, Souls-like.
Okay.
So it, you know, it's one of those more difficult games, similar like Dark Souls, Bloodborne, all that stuff. From a third-person perspective, where you use guns instead of swords for the most part, except I like swords, so I picked the archetype that lets you be a little better with them, and then I just get shot by my friends a bunch. It's been a great time. Nothing better than running into a group of enemies to start swinging on them.
You know?
And get shot like 6 times, blown up twice. You're like knocked to the ground, thrown around, and then smoke clears. You're alive, and everybody else is dead. It's a good time.
Yeah.
Been really looking forward to that one. They announced it like a year and a half ago, and I played the original game back in like 2016 when it released.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. Of course, Baldur's Gate 3 coming out on August 3rd.
Yes.
It's going to be releasing with the Dragonborn, the Half-Orc, and the Monk class added in, which is going to be really awesome.
Cool.
Outside of swords, I also just like good old knuckle sandwiches. And the Monk is the class for knuckling up to people. So
I think
I'm pretty
it'd be
excited
fighter,
about that.
but it's Monk for sure.
Yeah, so that's pretty exciting. In other news, I'm a little disappointed. I played a lot of Final Fantasy 14, and they didn't have a summer event this year.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Yeah, that one was kind of weird. I saw that on Twitter, and that one just didn't make sense to me. I mean, the game's pretty popular. Still has a lot of people like streaming it on Twitch and everything, which is, I feel, kind of like a good gauge. I feel like it's always a good gauge. Yeah, good gauge to see like engagement in a game based on how many people are actually like streaming and viewing it on Twitch.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a little bit interesting to me. Are they releasing like a new DLC or so, like DLC content or something this fall? Maybe
not that they've announced. Usually in one of their summer expos, they'll announce when a new X Pack is coming out, and it generally comes out in November. From what I hear, the next X Pack is probably going to get announced this winter and come out next summer.
Interesting.
But it is coming with a huge graphical update. The game was made, 8-9 years at this point ago, and it was made to be able to be played on PS3s.
Yeah.
And since then, I think they've even stopped supporting it on even PS4. You can play it on PS5 or you can play it on PC.
It's part of like the legacy content.
Yeah, so they have no reason to keep the graphical content like bar so low.
Yeah,
they've been working on that, and that's going to come out with the next X Pack. So I can only assume that they're just all hands on deck for that.
Very cool.
Plus, I know a lot of their higher ups were busy working on Final Fantasy 16 and pushing it out.
Yeah.
And now that that's out, they've been able to put some hands back on, and they got a big event coming out beginning of fall as well.
Oh, cool.
So, hopefully they got rid of it for a good reason. I know whatever they come out with, I'm going to be happy with it. I've not been disappointed with any content they've released since A Realm Reborn.
It's kind of like me and Bungie. Like, they could put out the world's worst game, and I would still buy it and support it and be like, well, it's decent.
Yeah, I've had to cut myself off from Destiny. I've played way too much of it. I can't have 2 MMOs that I'm addicted to. I don't have that much of a life.
Well, for me, it's just I got bored with it. It's been boring since Lightfall, but we can literally talk about that next week. Literally, quite literally, talk about that next week. Since we're gonna be doing a Destiny episode, but
I'll be excited for that. I like to consume Destiny content, not be in the community,
not be a part
anymore.
of it.
Yeah.
What about you, Kyle? You got anything else for the Nerd Network news?
I don't.
Wow. Okay. Well, I guess we'll end it there. Fine. Fuck it. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Kyle.
So, I mean, are you guys excited to play, Elder Scrolls 6 on your PlayStation 7s?
Yeah, I'll love to play with my grandkids in 80 years.
Yeah.
It'd be great.
I'm looking forward to that.
It'll be nice to be able to look down from heaven and
at that point
see my descendants playing it.
Yeah. Since I'll be, I'm already midway through my life.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Come on.
But yeah,
haven't you heard? Live fast, die beautiful. Can't die beautiful if you're old.
Shit. Well, I think that's a good spot for the ending of the content that we have for you this week, which is a great outro, let me tell you. What do you think, Kyle? You think this is a good place to, do the old, just kill it already?
Thanks for listening or watching or both if you did that. Want to definitely thank Cole for being our first guest on here and tolerating all our questions and nonsense.
Please, thank you for tolerating my rambling.
Yeah, no, thank you.
was-
Definitely thank you. And I think that everyone's going to like the palatable form, like you said, of the iceberg that is D&D content. It's been it's been a nice, like, introduction, a toe tipping into the water of, D&D content. And who knows? Maybe we'll have you again for some more D&D. Wow, my dog is making a lot of noise. D&D content. But yeah.
Oh, it was a good time. Thank you for having me. And I honestly, I'll be on whenever you guys want me to.
Awesome.
I have a fairly free schedule, so if you ever just need free content, let me know. I'll come on in.
Cool. How about next week? And then the week after that? I'm just kidding. We just keep them on a retainer.
At this rate, I don't got D&D going on next week or the week after that until something happens. So yeah, why not?
Well, folks, it's that time. Kyle, you want to say goodbye to everybody? I realized we didn't say goodbye to everybody last week. So
Did we not? Oh,
No.
I kind of blame you for that.
yeah,
Auf
week was a shit show.
Wiedersehen.
Yeah, that's
Goodbye.
it. Just bye now.
That's all I got.
Yeah. Well, everybody, just remember, you matter, you're important, and yeah, if nobody else tells you, hope you have a great day, and thanks for hanging out. This has been NerdPod episode
8.
8. Episode 8. Ocho, I think. I hope I'm not wrong with that. All right.
You're correct.
Bye, guys.
Bye.